Everyone has a story to tell. I don't want to hear yours next. Everybody, this is Chris Baker, and you're listening to the podcast, Tell Me Your Story. And today's special guest is Roger Knight. We're going to do like how we always do. We're going to just jump right into this and talk about, where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
Well, I grew up very close to Norwalk, Ohio, in a little town called Berlin Heights, class of 1964. And the school there was, I guess, shaped my life in that the teachers were extremely caring, got a good, solid basic education. Went on to Bowling Green State University, graduating there in 1968, and then I taught a year of high school, followed by 2 years in the military. I was commissioned a second lieutenant, and graduated the same day. And then I taught a year after I was commissioned, and at the end of that year of teaching high school in New London, which is very, very close to the Norwalk area. Went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, Fort Hood, Texas, the 1st Armored Division, and then I did a year in Vietnam as an Armored Cap platoon leader. And then following that, I came back to Ohio, taught at the HOVI, the Joint Vocational School, teaching senior social studies. Spent a year doing that, and then I went to Wellington High School, taught 3 more years in high school, 3 more years in high school, and then decided to retrain elementary. And my first teaching job in the elementary was a 1st and 2nd grade, believe it or not, going from seniors in high school to teaching 1st and 2nd grade. And that's pretty much formulated my attitudes for how kids learn. And then the principal there felt that 1st and 2nd grade, unfortunately, he thought it was for women to teach. Back in the days, well, I guess when you could say that. And then I just kind of laughed, and he moved me to 5th grade. So I taught 5th grade for the next couple of years. And then I was offered a position as an elementary principal at New London, where I had started my career. And I spent 12 years as the elementary principal in a K-6 setting. And then after 12 years of doing that, chose to go back to the classroom. I taught 5th grade first for a couple of years, and then went to 6th grade, and I taught 7th grade, 8th grade, so I pretty much covered all the territory. And then in 1998, I retired with 30 years of credit, and decided at age 51, I'm too young to not continue the career, so I went back 14 and a half years as a principal. I was a middle school principal in Bucyrus, 5 years in the middle school, being the assistant principal in charge of discipline. And we had pretty much a cakewalk. I really learned a lot about disciplining. Pretty much I thought I knew it all, but I worked for a man who was the master at doing it without really having to raise his voice. And we had a very quiet building in what could have been a pretty tough building. And then after 5 years of that, he retired, and they wanted me to be the high school principal, and I said I have no interest in that. And nor was I certified, and they didn't seem to care. But then they offered me the job of being the principal at the middle school, and I wasn't interested in that. And so, what are you interested in? I said, I'd like to have that building next door, which is a 4th and 5th grade building where 3 of the primaries funneled into it. And they couldn't pass the test to save their lives. They state test. They had passed 3 of them in 8 years, all in writing. And so we just made a few basic changes and did no intervention. We just basically taught content. And but I increased the amount of time that we spent on that content, especially in the area of mathematics. And the first year we were effective. And they had never been effective before. They had always been continuous improvement, which is basically just like treading water. You're just kind of making it, but you're not making a lot of progress. And then the second year, we passed all the tests, including the brand new 5th grade language arts test, the reading test. And I think we hit 91% on that. 75% is the benchmark to get the point. And we did it without having to do interventions during the school day, which everyone does. And I just refused to do that. We're going to spend our time with high-power instruction. And I totally had faith and confidence in my teachers. And that was pretty much the hallmark of my career as an administrator. That you work with what you have, and I found that in 7 school systems I was associated with over a 44-year period, that I never had a staff that wasn't extremely talented. So it's what you use, that's the talent, and how you use the talent that is important. So, but I don't want to mean to be rambling here, but I'm just progressing here to the end point. And but anyhow, at the end of that year, we were named the State Superintendent School of Promise Award. It's what we received. And then the Board of Education, to save some money, decided to close the building, and that was the building they chose to close. And then they moved those teachers in different buildings. They basically dismantled the building that was making the most progress. So I elected to leave. I said, I came here retired, I'll just leave retired. And that's when they were offering me the job to go back to the middle school. I said, no, I'm not interested in that. So I basically, at this stage of my life, I'm interested in 2 things. Number one, I have to enjoy my work. And number 2, you have to pay me. And in this case, all you're going to do is pay me. But I'm not going to enjoy the job, so I would just seek employment elsewhere. So I applied one place, and that was a place called Clear Fork Local Schools, which is south of Mansfield. And I was principal at Butler Elementary. There were 2 elementaries there, Butler and Belleville. Butler was another underperforming school. And they basically they couldn't pass tests either. But nice kids, nice teachers, but you had an administrator there that really was not cut out to be an administrator. Nice person. I don't want to take anything away from the individual as a human being, but just not able to control the building. In fact, they had a $15,000 state grant to study the discipline in that building. It was so out of control. And I immediately, I heard all the commentary in my office, from the organization that was administering the grant. I just put my hand up and said, no, the grant is over. They said, well, no, this is only the second year of the grant. He said, no. Last year was the first and final year of the grant. He said, they hired me to run this building, and if I can't do it, then they can get rid of me. He said, so we're not doing this anymore, putting these teachers through this. They were studying every disciplinary action, having to do all this paperwork, and it's totally unnecessary.
Hold on just 1 second. How was it like? How did you prepare yourself for that in that situation?
Well, it's just from the experience that I had. I knew how to control a building. For example, Bucyrus Middle School, where I was, I'd already had some of my own, attitudes toward disciplining, and discipline to me is that, like suspension. Suspension is considered to be like a last resort. When you're really fed up, you basically, send the kid packing. And our attitude was, no, it's the first line of defense. If you commit this error, you're gone. And people say, well, that's not really fair to the kid. He said, oh, absolutely it's fair. It sends a very clear, shocking message that we're not putting up with your garbage. Because the attitude I had was that 5% of your kids cause 100% of your problems. Okay, so what do you do with those 5%? So get rid of them. They're welcome to come back. You ever seen the movie Lean on Me? Joe Clark, New Jersey?
Yes.
I believe it was New Jersey. Okay. What did he do to bring back that building? He had the kids up on the stage, basically were the kids who were destroying the building, and he says, go home. You're done. And the people sitting out there in the audience, you're my student body. Now, you kids up in the stage, you're welcome to come back with your parents, but you're doing it under my conditions, not yours. Okay, and that was pretty much our attitude. So I kept very detailed data, had all my bar graphs color-coded, whatever, grades 6, 7, and 8, boys, girls, 16 different offenses. I had them all. And the people who would say that kids don't care that if they're suspended or not, and this is not true. You want to see my data? Because I would show you that a kid who had, and we didn't miss anybody. There was no conversation, no plea deals, no nothing. If you committed a particular offense, it was pretty much guaranteed what you were going to get. And every kid knew it. And so we didn't plea anybody out. And so I would have a whole lot of suspensions for one suspension, and then it just dropped like a rock, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I suspended on average over a 5-year period 254 times a year, and we still had 93% attendance, which is very good in its own right.
Yeah, that's really good.
All right. So, and the thing is that what I would tell people is these kids want to be in school. They say they don't care if they're suspended. That's a bluff, because there's not a dang thing for them to do at home. Their friends are at school. Okay. So if you call my teacher a filthy name, goodbye. You're done. Right now, there's no, say you're sorry, go back to class, whatever. And teachers are abused like you can't believe in this country by administrators who basically don't want to be bothered with the problems. And it's almost to the point in many places where it's the teacher's fault. You provoked the kid to call you a bitch, and we just didn't buy into that at all. And our teacher loved us, because we protected them all the time. If there's a tie between a kid and a teacher wins. Sorry about your luck. Teacher wins. And then I made a point of being in every classroom, every day. I knew what was going on. I didn't just show up, because it's time to do an evaluation, to fulfill the obligation of completing an evaluation. So anyhow, that building did extremely well, and then my Carlisle building did for 2 years real well, and now I'm down here at Clearfork, so I'll continue the story. And down at Clearfork, I'll give you an example, as I shared with you a few weeks ago. The 4th grade the previous year had hit 41% before I went down to that building. 41% of the kids had passed the state math test 4th grade. Okay? Mm-hmm. The highest they had ever had in the history of testing at that point, which hit about 9 years. This was 2005. when I went to this building, and the highest they'd ever had was 62%. Again, the benchmark, 75% of the kids passing the test to say that you were successful. Okay? The very first year, and the only changes I made, as I had told you before, is I looked at the schedule, and I found that they were teaching math for 45 minutes a day. And I said, well, no wonder they don't know any math. You don't teach it long enough. So it wasn't what you were teaching or how you were teaching, it was the length of teaching. It'd be like having a football practice for 30 minutes a day and wonder why you can't win a game. Okay? And you may have had a wonderful 30-minute practice, but you can't get it done.
Nope.
And okay, so I went from 45, 60 minutes, and I said, and that also applies to science and social studies, because those tests, were state tests. Okay, so and then the lunch hour was 60 minutes, and I said that's ridiculous. 30 minutes, so the teachers have an uninterrupted lunch, and I'm going to give them 5 more minutes to deliver their kids and pick them up, so they didn't have to cut things short to get their 30 minutes in. Okay, so everybody was fine with that. I could have gone down there and done anything I wanted to do because they were so starved for some leadership. So, and that's all. We never talked about curriculum. The 7 years I was down there, we never talked about curriculum, ever, in a teacher's meeting. So my teachers know the curriculum. They know the state standards. They know what they're doing. Have trust and respect for your teaching staff. And that's what I exercised during those years. And again, I was in every classroom, every day, not watching the teacher, I'm watching the kids to make sure the kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the teachers all knew that. Okay, so anyhow, long story short, go back to the 4th grade math score. Okay, the first math scores that came out that first year I was there, 88%. 26% higher than their highest score ever. And that 88% over the next 7 years represented the lowest score that we had.
Really?
Generally, we were in the 95, 96%.
Wow.
We only had a couple kids every year, and that includes all the special education kids. And 1 year we had everyone in the building in the 4th grade, 100% of them passed, including all the special ed kids. Okay, so math became, we were the envy of the world of math all of a sudden, and before, a previous assistant superintendent, who was no longer there even when I got there, had made the idiotic comment that other kids just couldn't learn because every year their test scores were so low. So therefore, you draw your conclusion. Well, they must not be very smart, and it was just a ridiculous concept, and we weren't buying into that. So again, in the 7 years I was there, I hired 3 teachers in 7 years. That shows there was virtually no turnover whatsoever.
Wow.
Okay, so anyhow. That first year, we were effective. They had never been effective before. They'd always been continuous improvement and treading water. Okay, the following year, that same year, the only reason we were effective is because they came up with the 5th grade math test, which was the most difficult state test of any test, just based on percentage of kids who were passing it. Hardly anybody in the state was passing it. Okay, the first year we hit 67%, and the math teacher, who I thought was wonderful, was really distressed. And I says, don't worry about it. You had the highest score in the county at 67%. No one passed the test. The following year, she hit 91%,
wow,
which was one of the highest in the state of Ohio. And for the next 6 years, we passed the 5th grade math test, all 6 years in a row. And hardly anybody in the state can say that. Okay, now, what did we do differently? Well, we went to an hour, we taught math. I had a gifted talented program where instead of picking out the prima donnas, who hit the 95th percentile rank, to be eligible, we had full inclusion. So I had my gifted talented coordinator 1 day a week go into each of my 4th and 5th grade classrooms for mathematics and do the higher level reasoning thinking. And the kids loved mathematics, and they were talking about math during the school day as a result of it. So we were passing. No intervention during the school day, once again, where people carved out that 1 hour block where, kids who need extra help, got their extra help. And I said, that's a joke. And I said, we're not doing that. And so I ran an intervention program after school on a voluntary basis, opened up to all kids in grades 3, 4, and 5, and I would have 100 kids a night stay voluntarily after school, and I ran it. So I told the teachers, you go home and be with your families and just do your regular work. I said, we're not doing all of this remedial stuff. And so I prepared all the materials, and I hired high school kids, paid a minimum wage to come in and present the lessons to these kids. And I just went room to room to room to room, make sure the kids were on task. And then after 2 years of doing that, I discovered, you know what? I'd be better served not to have high school kids doing this. I need middle school kids to do this.
Wow.
And they were much better. Plus, I didn't have to pay them. and they loved it. They just loved it. So anyhow, what we were finding is that kids who normally would be proficient on a state test were turning up accelerated scores, and kids who would normally be accelerated were scoring advanced. And this was all voluntary. It wasn't like, well, all the at-risk kids, we want to stay after school. No.
I have a quick question real quick.
We had brilliant kids staying after school for intervention.
Hold on a second. I have a quick question real quick. How many of your former students ended up becoming teachers and professors?
How many?
Yes.
I have no idea. I've been out of it for so long. I've been totally out for 10 years. And I've been gone down there for 10 years. So I know that there are, people who run education. Whether it was because of that or not, I don't know. But all I can tell you is that our kids were progressing at such a rapid pace. It was unbelievable. So I went there in 2005. 4 years later, in 2009, I get a phone call from the State Department of Education, and we were nominated for the National Blue Ribbon Award, representing Ohio. And to get that, you either have to be in the top 10%, regardless of demographics in the state, on the test, or you have to have high levels of poverty, which means at least 40% of your student body has to be on free or reduced lunch. And we normally were hitting about 50% of our kids at that time.
Just take a moment for a second right there. That's incredible, though. I mean, going to a school that really didn't have, nothing to offer, and you go in there and bringing them up, that's wow.
Well, I thought it was fun to go to school every day. So anyhow, and I asked the question, well, why are we being nominated? And they were kind of a little set back, and they said, you don't know? I said, no, I really don't know. I said, I know we're rated excellent, but lots of schools are rated excellent. He said, well, it's because your economically disadvantaged kids are scoring the socks off the tests. And that's all they cared about, the test scores. Okay, yeah. We were not test score driven. We were education driven. We taught the material. If you teach the material, to me, the natural outcome is like practicing football, or basketball. If you do the right things, and every team has talent, okay, and no one has a lock on talent in schools. I mean, every school has smart kids, okay? And we just assume that they're all smart. And if you make that assumption and you present the material and you make the kids come to school, you make them behave themselves, you make them do their work every day, and you have all of those things taken care of, as a matter of course, the natural outcome is usually very good. So my response back to them was, well, I knew that my kids were poor. I didn't know they were dumb. and so we basically, in 2009, that fall, then, we had received the award, and we went to Washington, D.C., and received the award from Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education. And, so we put Butler basically on the map. And then the following year...
Hold on. Can you kind of describe, what it was like going up to D.C. and receiving that award, how you were feeling in that moment?
It was pretty impressive because obviously, only the highest achieving schools in the country were there from all 50 states and territories. Okay, so you're all there. And so I went with a teacher. I happened to be a fourth grade teacher. We just had a drawing from our teachers. And so, my wife went with me, and so we, I drove, and we stayed in a real nice hotel, and, they had, it was quite deluxe. The government did quite well presenting. And years ago, you could, fill out your own application and do all this work, and kind of promote yourself, to get this award. Mm-hmm. Well, they changed it where you had to earn it. They came to you. You didn't go to them. So that made it pretty special.
Yeah, I bet that made it more special just to be able to, just to say it.
But the following year then, because we had a reading recovery program there for our first graders, which was a very intense reading program, and it's under the auspices of Title I, which you may or may not be familiar with. The reading program, the federal reading program, for at-risk readers. Okay, and but reading recovery is a hybrid of that, and it involves selecting the lowest, approximately 20% of your first graders, who are really, they're the lowest functioning readers you have. Okay, and it doesn't mean that they're cognitively delayed or anything. It just means for some reason they have not picked up on the skills of reading, and then they fall way behind quickly. So reading recovery means you're recovering them so that they can read at the same level as their peers and move on quickly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that program, you have one teacher who works with 5 kids, each child individually now, not 5 as a group. Each one of them gets a half an hour of her time, one-on-one. So like all morning, she has 5 kids that she will deal with. Okay, now, what happens there? The kid falls in love with the teacher. What are they doing? They're learning the skills of reading. So what does the kid learn to love? Reading. Yep. Okay? It's like your coach. If the coach shows an interest in you and you really respect the guy, you play harder and you want to learn to please him. And so it's the athletic connection there. So anyhow, we had a very powerful reading recovery program, and when I first went down there, the administration and treasurer had presented to me eliminating the program to save money. Okay, well, I happen to be very familiar with the reading recovery program because I had it in the previous district. Otherwise, I would have said, okay, I don't even know what it is. Go ahead, get rid of it. And I just put my hand up and said, you're not touching my reading recovery program because I know a lot about it, and it's your salvation. It's the salvation for those 20% of your first graders every year. Okay, so anyhow, I tracked all those kids, And kids who had had reading recovery, by the time they were taking the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade tests, were generally almost 100% of them passing the state test in grades 3, 4, and 5. And not only that, but they were passing the math test as well. They had recovered. And these kids would have just fallen through the cracks without it. Okay, so anyhow, in 2010, the following year after we got the National Good Ribbon Award, they called from the state and said, we're naming you the Title I Distinguished School in Reading to represent the state of Ohio. Okay, and we want you and a teacher to go to Tampa, Florida to receive your award. Okay, so I decided, no, I'm not going to Tampa, Florida. I've got 2 reading recovery teachers. They did all the work. They're going to Florida. So the treasurer took care of it, and we sent them. I learned a long time ago that as principal, take no credit. It said set the stage, provide the leadership, do what you have to do, stay out of the picture. If there's a picture to be taken, make sure you're not in it. So you focus on teachers, kids, and you will be highly successful, and you can walk away knowing, if it's important to you, that you did it, but you don't have to be in the picture, because there's a lot of resentment. I mean, I see that all the time with pictures of principals and paper whenever. So what the heck did they do? They didn't do it. They set the stage, but focus on your people. So I learned that strategy. So anyhow, we got 2 national awards in 2 years, and over a 7-year period. Had a great big huge banner on the outside of the building in plywood, National Blue Ribbon School. and inside we had another big banner that they sent, or they picked up down in Tampa, Florida. National Title I Distinguished School, 2010. So this little podunk, I mean, we're talking Mayberry here. Just nice kids, nice parents. No one is, at the elite class. Supposedly they're just common, ordinary American people who want to educate their kids.
And in this period, did you get, like, after winning the rewards, did you get, like, more kids that wanted to enroll there?
Well, you're familiar with open enrollment.
Yep.
Okay, we'll give you some idea. The first year I was there, and I didn't even know enough to check with this until after I left there after 7 years. So I went down to the EMIS coordinator who does all the data entry, and I said, do you have the data on open enrollment for the Butler building? So sure. So how far back do you want to go? We'll go back to my first year here, 2005. Okay, so 2005, the end of that first year, I think it was like a -7. In other words, that we had 7 more kids who had left than came in.
Wow.
Okay, -7. All right. Well, that was after my first year. So that one, I figured, well, that's not my fault. They didn't know who I was or what we were doing. It's just that Butler had a lousy reputation academically. Okay. My 7th year down there, we were +33.
Wow.
Okay. Now each kid represented at that time $5,000 or $6,000 in state funding. So do the math: 33 times $5,000. $165,000. Okay, I was being paid at that time $65,000. I think I was one of the lowest paid, and I never complained about my money because I was retired. In the first place, but at $65,000, I was one of the lowest paid administrators in the county. Okay, but I was basically bringing in an extra $100,000 a year just on that basis of people wanting to come, and all they just knew National Good Ribbon School. I mean, we had quite a reputation, and we built it almost overnight, and it can be done. Now, let's get to the politics of education, and which much of it was happening during that time, which I chose to ignore. But then afterwards, your state legislature, in working in concert with the State Department of Education, have put in an awful lot of policies that have done nothing but restrict, what teachers can and can't do. For example, the OTES, the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, that they think is so valuable, which takes up an inordinate amount of time. It's basically a joke. Everyone has figured out how to circumvent the system, as we all do when something is ridiculous and unjustified and unfair. You find ways of getting around it. And that was basically to weed out your lousy teachers, as though we had so many of them that we just had to go after them. Okay, so what the state legislature has done in concert with the State Department of Education sent a very clear message to teachers everywhere that we don't respect you and we don't trust you. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, any way you slice it, when you hire a teacher and they go in that classroom, you can't do a whole lot about what's going on in their classroom, because when you leave, they're going to do what they want to do anyhow. So why don't you support them, respect them? They're educated people. Stop treating them like they're morons, and you'll get much more productivity. And they complain about test scores, and I think I had related to you when we talked before about the Elyria Chronicle when they interviewed me when I was running for state school board, which I did not get. And they asked, and I was telling them that the state testing is the most ridiculous thing that they've ever come up with. It's costly, not only in the amount of money they're spending, on the test and scoring and whatever, but the amount of instructional time that is being taken away from the classroom. And a lot of schools, again, you want high test scores? Fine. I won't teach the stuff over here that needs to be taught, in my opinion, and I'll just teach what you told me is important to teach, so that I can generate that high test score. Okay, so you're taking away creativity, ingenuity, all the basic intuitive skills that teachers have, so that we can focus on what someone else out there thinks is important to do. And then we're going to do the testing in March, which means after the testing is over, we have this big letdown, like, well, the year's over anyhow, nothing else is important to teach, I guess, because it wasn't on the test. And I remember talking to a state senator here a few years ago when I was running for state, school board, and I said, I'm going to give you an analogy. So I was in Vietnam for a year, and what was the hallmark of success in Vietnam? Body count. Okay? Oh, you want body count? I'll get you body count. We'll make up the numbers. We'll kill men, women, and children. We'll kill a bunch of people over here in a hooch, and we'll count the bodies and turn them in, and all is well, and we have success because we have this body count. Now, that's a pretty grim analogy. But, you want high test scores? I'll get you high test scores, and I will manipulate the school day and what teachers do against their better, knowledge and wisdom of what they should be doing in order to generate high test scores. So we get these high test scores, but the kids really don't know any more than anybody else. It's fictitious. The whole thing's a joke. So, and then the guy said, well, if we don't have test results, to show what the proficiency of the school, then how do we measure success? And I countered that with a question back to him. Said, how did we used to measure success? For decades and decades and decades, and making a productive American public. We did it basically by public opinion. And what are our kids doing after they graduate from high school? How are they functioning in college? And those kinds of attitudes. So that's pretty much the story. Now, there were a lot of nuances to what I did during the school day to basically support my teachers. I made sure that in my building that the teachers had practically no duties. There's whoever runs the schedule runs the building. A lot of times the schedule is pawned off onto somebody else. The principal needs to really be involved in that schedule because it has a lot to do with success. And I had during the noon hour my phys ed teacher and the library aide do the entire noon hour as far as supervision on the playground. Just two people, because then the kids all knew that the rules are going to apply all the time. You didn't have this teacher who's weak, this teacher's strong, I can get away with this and get away with that. And then during the noon hour, I ran a noon study session for kids who didn't get their homework done. It was not punitive as far as behavior. It was strictly academic. So we sent a message to our kids that doing your work wasn't an option. And the principal is going to run it. I didn't farm it out to some aide or another teacher to do it. I did it every day for 7 years. And then math facts, our kids knew their math facts because I was the gatekeeper for math facts. And I could go into detail on how that was done, but it was a very simple detail. It cost practically nothing. I had $21 invested in 7 years. So that's, I believe, if I do my math right, that's $3 a year is what it costs to make sure all my 4th and 5th graders knew their math facts. And the gifted talented coordinator, who was a math genius, retired high school math teacher, said that we were the only building that he had worked in where the kids knew their math facts. And it was because of this process. And it was so simple, it's ridiculous. And the kids just were knocking the socks off the math test, all of them. So, it's a very simple process. But, we had gone down to Columbus and talked at the Ohio School Boards Association meeting as guest lecturers, 2 years in a row. And my opening statement to the 200 people sitting in the room was that, now, folks, I want to tell you that I'm not smart enough to make this complicated. And then I would start in showing this, here's some things that you can do that don't cost you a dime. They're easy to do. He said, but I'm going to tell you up front that they're so simple, you won't do it. Because everybody seems to think that educating kids is a complicated matter. And it never used to be, but it is now, because we've complicated it with a layer of bureaucracy that just doesn't quit. We have literacy coaches now, people who just do interventions, remediation. And I keep saying, okay, so when do we stop doing the remediation and we start teaching the real thing? And those were just my attitudes.
I'm just like really thinking like your like how your strategies were so simple that you could apply that to, outside of teaching, you could apply that to jobs, and it would still be as successful.
You are 100% correct. And I coached for many years, junior high track, varsity football. I even coached 8th grade girls basketball, and I don't know any more about basketball now than I did then. And but I knew what it took to win. And it just like I'll give you this analogy. When I first started coaching junior high, I was the principal at the time. I had 2 buildings, 550 kids in 2 buildings, and the superintendent said, "Hey, I'd like you to coach junior high girls track." And I said, "I don't know anything about track." He said, "Well, you ran track." He said, "I ran the 800." there's 13 events. He said every one of them, and he knew because he was a shot put discus. He was the head coach at Berea High School at one time, and always took kids to state meet in shot put and discus, and he continued that at New London as the superintendent. And they said, well, just try it a year. I did, and at the end of the year, and I said, I don't want to do this again. I mean, the eighth graders, they run, hide behind the buses. I mean, they were. He said, well, that group is terrible. I said, but you trained the seventh graders. He said, give it one more year. And the guy was right. So we went from last place to being in the middle of the pack, and then we started to win the championship. and now, how did I learn? Well, example, I went over to the high jumper. I've got my notepad and my clipboard, and I said to the high school kid, who I knew was a good high jumper, he says, so what are you doing? Well, I'm high jumping. I know you're high jumping, but tell me, what are you doing? Tell me your routine. Show me your routine. Give me some detail. And I just wrote down everything that high jumpers do, long jumpers, what they do, shot putters, what they, and I did that for every single event. And then I started to coach. And, and then when I got some good junior high kids, I would make them my assistant coaches. Okay, now Becky here is in charge of you guys. She's the best shot putter, and she's going to show you the routine that you have to go through every day. So we were winning with less talent because most coaches don't have time to, fool around with a shot putter or a discus thrower. So just go throw it, or just go launch up. And they have no concept, even though athletically they're probably better athletes, but they don't take the time to teach them the skills. Okay, so we were picking up, third, fourth places, fifth place, and picking up points enough to win the track meets. So it's like a chess game. Well, you do the same thing in the classroom. So the athletic analogy fits perfectly, but I had such a wide range of experiences, my military experience, teaching first and second grade and seeing, how quickly kids just like a sponge learn all this stuff very quickly. And then, like I said, fifth grade, sixth grade, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You taught in a vocational setting. I was around some really good people and some not so good people. But I always felt I was a much better administrator than I was a teacher because I didn't really have the patience to go in every day with the same group of kids. But I always could see the big picture. And I saw how teachers were very fragile people. They look like they've got alligator skin, but they do not. The same ones that, seems to be hardcore during the school day will go home and cry at night. And that's what's happening. We're destroying some awfully good people in this country. And I've got 2 daughters now who are educators, and they call me every day. And I mean, my youngest one's 42, and the oldest one's going to be 49. And many years of education and teaching, behind both of them. And I just tell them, it's just control what you can control, and don't worry about the rest. You guys are doing a great job. And and they don't get involved in the politics and that type of thing. They just go in and teach, and they have control over their classrooms. And they've been fortunate. I think that both of them had pretty decent principals. But the principal runs the building. Many years ago, I was invited down to Ashland University to for a graduate class, just to tell them pretty much what I've been telling you, except I went into more detail as the specifics of what I did during the school day. And there were about 29 people in this class, and they were all either administrators or would-be administrators. And I asked them one question. He said, what's the number one problem in public education today? And they gave me just a whole raft of different answers. And I said, well, maybe. I said, well, what do you think the number one problem is? He said, you. He said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, a lot of you guys, I'm sure, are excellent administrators, and there's probably a lot of the rest of you who are not. Okay, and let me prove it to you. You're all currently working in a school somewhere. So ask yourself, how is it going to school today? Is it a delightful place to go? Are the kids under control? Are they learning? They aren't calling me filthy names. I ask them to do something, they're doing it. What do you attribute that chemistry to? So I'll bet you can attribute it to the guy who's running the building, the principal, either a man or a woman, whoever's running that building. So now, you people who operate in a zoo-like atmosphere where the kids don't function, don't come to school, don't pay any attention, you got problems galore. What do you attribute that to? I bet you can also attribute that to the person who's running the building or not running the building. And he said, well, yeah. And then I've been in other graduate classes where I would be the only administrator, and they all rip on their principal. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, the building's out of control. And he said, the behavior is terrible. And I said, well, how many kids you got in your building? And they give me a number, and they said, well, how many of the kids are out of control? And well, lots of them. No. He said, give me a number. Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 10? How many? Well, in no case was it ever more than 10 kids in the building. And he says, get rid of them. just boot their butts right out the door. And you're welcome to come back. And if you do it again, I'm going to push your butt out the door again. And there's, and there's no discussion. I'm not going to bring you in. Well, now, Johnny, why did you do that? I mean, come on. You got to shape up. You promise, your sign here. No, you're gone. And people say, well, they don't know what they did. Yes, they do. They know exactly what they did, and they know the consequences. I'd always ask my kids, I said, is this punishment fair? Well, yeah, but you don't seem to care who it is. I said, thank you. I appreciate that. In other words, it's not, well, your dad is an important person in the community and your dad isn't. We didn't care. If you committed a crime, you're out of here. We'll take you back. I mean, it's not a permanent thing. He said, but you're going to serve your time. And people say, well, he's not learning anything when he's not here. I said, it's not my problem. He said, the other kids are learning something because he's not here. And that's the attitude you got to have. And it's called addition by subtraction. And it works. And my feeling was that if I can hit 93%, and that 93% is learning because those few kids are not here, then so be it. So, okay, Chris, end of story. I could give you some other anecdotal things specifically what I did, but that pretty much summarizes my 44 years.
That was incredible. I hope whoever's listening right now really learned a lot from that, because I know I did. Just hearing your story and just listening to just your whole career, and just like I said, it was just like pretty much just simple things that could be used for anything.
But it's called trust and respect.
Yeah.
You have no option. It's like this is my football team. And as one coach had always said, don't complain about the kids. They're the only ones you have. You're not going to fabricate anybody else. These are the kids. It's like the movie Hoosiers, where they're out on the gym floor. They got 6 kids. You watch the movie Hoosiers?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, really? You
Nope.
need to watch that.
I'll have to write that one down.
It's yeah, you'll love it. And but it's a small school. The only Indiana basketball is what it's about. Okay, and this was a small school in Indiana, and they won the state championship. This was like 1951. Okay, and there were no divisions. No divisions. You have one state champion. And this small school with 6 kids won the state championship, played in Indianapolis, and won it all. Okay, and it's just impossible odds. Okay, and I remember them. They wanted this other kid to come out for basketball. Who was a star, and the coach said, "Hey, we're not worried about who we don't have. This is what we do have. This is what we play with." Well, the kid finally did come out because he saw how good this coach was, and that he meant business. He wasn't put up with any nonsense. So he did come out and play. So then they ended up, I think, with 7 kids on the team and won the state championship. So, but anyhow, that's pretty much my attitude, because I would go into the classrooms and I'd say, "Kids, why is it that we don't do so well on our tests?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And it said, "You guys aren't any smarter than anybody else, but you aren't any less smart either." Okay? He said, "So what makes the difference?" And they didn't know. And I said, "Well, it's because we work harder than anybody else. And that's all you have going for you. You just have to work harder than everybody else, and do your lessons every day, and pay attention, and success will follow you." Okay? You don't have to be, because, like I said, you're no brighter than anybody else, but don't cut yourself short either. You're no less bright. So we're going to work harder. So let's make this a little competition here. He said, "Who do you like to beat, and who do you want to beat?" And they say, "Belleville." He said, No. Belleville is the other elementary school. They're our friends. We want them to do well because the scores are combined, our scores and their scores, to go to the state. So as a district, we get the point. And so we don't want to compete against them. We want them to do well, and we do well. He said, "Who do you like to beat in football?" They said, "Lexington." Well, let's beat Lexington. And we'd go after them because they were the hotsy-totsy school in the area, and all the smart kids supposedly, and so we went after them to beat them. So I kept all the test scores, grades 3, 4, and 5, which is my building, 35 different school districts in 5 counties. So I took Richland County and all the counties that bordered us. I said, "That's our competition." Okay? So let's just see how we do. And I would say I want to be in the first quartile across the board. It was the top 25% of the scores for every test, every grade level, 3, 4, and 5. And that's what we did. So we don't have to be number 1, even though many times we were number 1. But we don't have to be number 1. I said, but if you're number 1 in 3rd grade math, and then you're number 35 in 6th grade math, there's a problem here. Okay? It means you have a very good teacher here, and this one isn't doing jack squat. That's what it usually means. Okay? So we want to be across the board. Every test, every grade. First quartile. Not second, not third, not fourth. And the other attitude that a lot of principals have, and I remember one local administrator who said his comment was the first quartile kid will pass the test if he stayed at home. Okay? Now, he's bright. He can pass, he didn't have to come to school. Second quartile kid passes because he had instruction. Third quartile kid will pass the test if we really work them hard. He said, fourth quartile kid, screw them. We aren't going to pay any attention to them. And they said, that's wrong. See, we got the National Blue Ribbons because we made a concerted effort to go after all of our kids, including the fourth quartile kid, with lower ability. And those kids were doing remarkably well. They moved out of the fourth quartile into the third quartile and sometimes into the second quartile. So it was an incredible performance, and we had fun doing it. Kids were happy. They were content. Attendance was good. People were pouring into the district, and in an old school building, 1920s and 40s is when it was built. In fact, they tore it down here a few years ago and built a new building.
Wow.
So that's my story, Chris. Top to bottom.
What would your advice be to the principal that's kind of having a struggle right now, just trying to keep his school together? What would your advice be to that guy or girl?
Trying to keep it together. Figure out what is it that I can downplay or circumvent. In other words, I worked for the superintendent, who I had the utmost respect for to this day, and he'd always said, we will never allow rules, regulations, or even the law get in the way of helping a child. That make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so don't advertise that, Mr. Principal. And he said, but figure out what can I get away with. For example, you're probably not familiar with ESCs, Educational Service Centers. They used to be called county offices. Okay, it used to be every county in the state had a county office. And they provided support services of various kinds. Okay, so the Educational Service Center just included more districts, maybe 2 or 3 counties instead of 1 county. So they just consolidated. And then as a principal, we were supposed to go to those meetings, and they'd have 1 a month. Okay, in 7 years, I went 2 times to the ESC meeting.
That's it.
And they would send me a great big huge folder with a note on, sorry we missed you. And I'd throw it in the Wayfaber can. Never looked at anything in it. 7 years. And I remember when we got the National Blue Ribbon School, I was bemoaning the fact to my wife that, you know what, they've never called me on the telephone, sent me a telegram, an email, an attaboy. I mean, because this was a feather in their cap. We were the first public school in Richland County to receive that award. Okay, now the only other school that had received that award was St. Peter's, parochial school years ago. Okay, but nothing was communicated. Like, how did you do this? There was no attempt to find out how we did it whatsoever. And my wife's response was, well, why should they? You treat them like shit. My fault, because I have hearing aids on and I have Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
And I think I bumped it. And they're very sensitive, so I think it's my fault, my end. So. But anyhow, that was some of the, it's kind of professional jealousy, and I'll tell people very openly that I have never, ever had an original idea in my life concerning, process, educational reform, whatever. I have just observed, just like with the Blue Ribbon. I mean, I went to schools and talked to principals who, had very successful programs and picked their brain. What are you doing? And listen to what they had to say. And, now I'm the one that's knowledgeable, but it's not me per se. I was just one of these guys who would take these ideas and implement them. And a lot of people won't do it. They just won't implement things. And to me, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I can tell you a zillion things that I did just because they were fun to do, and that I found. I'll give you one example. When I was at Bucyrus at Carlisle, the day was kind of boring. Most days were, I just let the teachers teach, and I went around room to room to room to room. And so after the first grading period, I think it was the second year I was there, I decided, well, I think I'll just have mini conferences with the kids after the grade cards come out. So grade cards came home on Friday, gave the kids, weekend, parents look at them, sign them, and return them on Monday. So then I decided, well, I'm going to have individual conferences with each kid just outside their classroom, just for their grade card, talk to them. And so I did that, and I just go to the classroom, knock on the door, and Mrs. Jones come to the door, and I said, is this a good time that I could do mini conferences with kids? Yeah, sure, yeah, go ahead. So I had copies of all their grade cards, and I'd start, Jimmy Adams, okay, so start with the A's. And Jimmy comes out and sits at a table with me, and say, hey, nice grade card, I like this comment over here, and you get down to maybe a D in reading or something. You said, well, now, what's this D in reading? What's the problem there? We talk about it a little bit, but never chewing the kid out. And I said, I want to tell you what. He said, let's maintain what you got here, because you're really just doing a nice job. He said, but we're going to fix this D. So I don't want to see a D next time. It doesn't have to be an A or B. He said, but D's are not allowed. We don't want any D's. Certainly no F's. And so anyhow, I did that the first quarter. And then the second quarter came around, and didn't dawn on me to do it a second time. And the teachers came to me, and they said, hey, the kids are wondering when you're coming around for your conferences. He said, what conferences? We'll go over the grade cards. And all of a sudden, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. They cared.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'd never done it before in my life. I just did it that time because, I was bored. Okay? Well, for the next 8 years, I did it faithfully. And I only did grades 4 and 5, the upper grades, where they were really academic. And then the 5th grade, when I was down there at Butler, I noticed in the 5th grade science, the first test that came out, and I told the teachers that when you give a test, I want it to be a final exam. I mean, every test you give should be, because the state test is a marathon. Okay? Mm-hmm. If you're doing a reading, you're reading several stories, not one. Okay? So therefore, they have to have endurance, just like in an athletic event. So when you give a test, I want it to be a marathon. None of this short cycle assessment crap that everybody was doing. And so the test would be like 12, 15 pages long. And if you covered it, I want it on the test. Then the kids have far more opportunity to do well. Well, this first test, about 40% of the class got a D or an F on the very first test. So I went in the classroom and I said, kids, says, how many letters in the alphabet? They said 26. He says, not here in Butler. He says, only 24. So what do you mean there's 26? He says, no, we're leaving out D and F. Those are not allowed in my alphabet. And I said, now here's how we're going to fix that. He said, if you get a D or an F on a test, and we're going to start with this very first one you got here, I'm going to ask the teacher here to give me a blank copy of the test for all of you who got a D or an F, and she's going to circle the ones that you got wrong. Okay? And then you're going to come down to my study session at noon. You're going to go to the head of the line, get your lunch, come into the room, sit down, and I'm going to hand you this test, and you're going to fix it. Okay? And you can fix it in 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days, or the rest of the year. It's up to you. And you can bring your notes with you, your textbook, your best friend, your grandmother, I don't care who you bring in. He said, but you are going to fix it, and I'm going to have the answer key up here, and I'll check it off, and we'll keep doing that until you get them all right. He says, now, what will your grade be? You still got a D or an F. So we're not averaging grades, you know. He said, so the message I'm sending to you is study the first time around so you don't get the D or the F. Okay. Now, when I went down to the Blue Ribbon award ceremony in Washington, I remember presenting that at a table of teachers, and the principal said, "Oh, well, we do that." I said, "Oh, you do? How do you do this?" I said, "Oh, well, we just take their fixed tests and the old tests, and we average the grades." I said, "No, that's not what you should be doing." He said, "Still give them the D or the F." He said, "Because otherwise you're sending them a message that all they got to do is fix it, and then they'll get a higher grade. We're not playing that game. We want to send a message that do your studying in whatever, it's a one-shot deal." Okay? So, honestly, Chris, after that, I did not have a D or an F the rest of the year.
Wow. Just that simple
Because it was
of a strategy. Yeah.
It was that. It sent a clear message that we're not doing that. So they had they maintained, and then another little antidote here is that I would take all the fourth and fifth grade tests before the kid would take it. So I asked the teacher, "Would you give a test? Put it in my mailbox." And I took math, science, social studies. I did not do reading because obviously if you haven't read the thing, you aren't going to know anything on it. So I took math, science, and social studies. So I would take the test cold turkey, and then I would put it in the teacher's mailbox. The teacher would grade my test and give it back to me. Now, the highest score I ever got in fifth grade science, because I'm telling you, it's hard, was 85%. That's the highest score I ever got in the years that I did that. And then I would walk into the classroom just before the kids were taking the test. I said, "Hey kids, I got my test back. What'd you get on it?" I said, 81%. He said, "Well, that's not so we could kick your butt." He said, "Well, prove it. He said, "Well, let's see it." And I'd show him the back of it. I said, "Here it is." No, we want to see the page. No, we don't do that. He said, "But I got 81, see if you beat it." And I remember one time going up to the third floor, and they were changing classes, and I had all these kids standing out in the hallway, and most of them were on IEPs, special education kids, and they were demanding to know what I got on my science test. And I say, "Hey, back off." And so I got I tell them like maybe 80% or whatever I got on it. And they say, "Ha, we beat that." and they took the same test that everybody else took. And I tell them, "So, well, you want to do better than me? You had the instruction. You had the study guide. I just took it cold turkey. And just because I'm principal doesn't mean, I know all this stuff." And one year we had an exchange principal from China. And spoke no English. He was there with a translator from Ashland University. And he's sitting over there at lunchtime. And I'm sitting over with the fifth grade kids. And then I talked to the translator, and the translator informed me that, this principal would never do this, what you're doing, sitting with the kids. He says, "Oh, I thought he was here to learn something about how we do things a little bit better than they do in China, as far as because they were here to find out why Americans are so innovative and creative, and it has to do with freedom." Not just the academics, okay?
Yeah.
They're big on memorization and it's super critical to be extraordinarily successful, but you don't have that camaraderie. And then I told him about taking these tests, and he said, "Oh, he would never do that." Well, why not? He said, because he would be expected to get 100% on everything. Otherwise, the students would look down upon him as not being perfect. And so that's pretty sad. So anyhow, I think I probably covered about not everything, but most everything to show you that you can really win without having to cheat or make people's lives miserable.
Definitely learned a lot from your story. And as we wrap this thing up, I just want to say thank you for coming on and telling your story.
Well, you're welcome. I'm sorry I was the other end of the building from you. I never dreamed about going to the back, because I just thought that was the back parking lot. I was up by the office door. I just figured that was the front entrance.
Hey, no worries, man. We still got to connect and tell your story, man. It's awesome.
Good. So,
if anybody wants to get in contact with you or get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, I suppose email is probably the best. I don't know if you want to do phone number.
Yeah, no phone number. You could tell your email.
Yeah.
You could say it.
VR Knight, V as in Victor, R as in Roger, Knight, Knight, at hotmail.com.
At hotmail.com.
Yes, sir.
All right, as we sign off here, I just want to say thank you guys for listening. And tune in next time for the next episode. And also, if you'd like to come on and tell your story, just feel free to message me. This is Chris. I'm signing out. Peace.